Alright, Karina baby, for the ninth we have A Tale of the Tail. Let's take a look. Oliver puppy looked at himself in the mirror one morning. He liked his ears. He thought his nose was wonderful. But when he turned to look at his tail, Oliver puppy sighed. It was short and thin, hardly a tail at all. It will grow, said his mother. You'll see. Oliver went to see his friends on the farm. First, he visited a cow. She had a long, swishy tail. I wish I had a tail like yours, said Oliver. The cow mooed with laughter. My tail is much too long for a puppy, she said. Next, Oliver went to see the horse. It had a frolicky fleece away with his thick black tail. I wish I had a tail like yours, said Oliver. The horse neighed with laughter. My tail is much too long and too big for a puppy, he said. But Oliver went to see the chickens. The rooster was strutting around the yard. He had a magnificent feathery tail. I wish I had a tail like yours, said Oliver. The rooster crowed with laughter. Just think what you'd look like with feathers, he said. Oliver felt sad. All his friends had beautiful tails. If only his would grow. Oliver puppy went home to his mother. She wagged her tail, her long hairy tail, and licked him all over. I wish I had a tail like yours, said Oliver. His mother smiled. You will, she said. Wait and see. From that day on, Oliver puppy grew bigger and bigger, until one day he looked in the mirror again. He liked his ears, and his nose was better than ever. And when he turned to look at his tail. There was the best tail he had ever seen. I told you it would grow, said his mother. It's a fine tail, and just right for me, said Oliver proudly. It takes time to grow into who you actually are as a human being. When you're little, you have beautiful features and you're just absolutely perfect, and then you go through this awkward type of stage, and then you grow into who you actually are as a human being and how beautiful you actually are. Your heart is the most important, but you do grow into yourself, and he just needed time to become who he was. Next is the Frog Princess. This fairy tale concerns a girl who performs an act of kindness and gains an unwelcome companion. But she is no ordinary girl. She is a princess, and her new friend is not ordinary either. Read on. The Frog Prince. In the olden times, when wishing was having, there lived a king whose daughter was all beautiful, but the youngest was extraordinarily beautiful, that the sun himself was enchanted every time she came out into the sunshine. Near the castle of the kings was the large and gloomy forest, and in the midst stood an old lime tree, beneath whose branches splashed a little fountain. So whenever it was very hot, the king's youngest daughter ran off into the woods and sat down by the side of this fountain. When she was bored, she would often divert herself by throwing a golden ball up in the air and catching it. And this was her favorite amusement. Now one day it happened that when the princess threw this golden ball into the air, it did not fall down into her hand, but on the grass. Then it rolled past her into the fountain. The king's daughter followed the ball with her eyes, but it disappeared beneath the water, which was so deep that no one could see the bottom. She began to cry louder and louder. As she cried, a voice called out, Why weepest thou, O king's daughter? The tears would melt even a stone to pity. And she looked around to the spot whence the voice came, and she saw a frog stretching his thick, ugly head out of the water. You old water puddler, she said, Was it you that spoke? I am weeping for my golden ball, which has slipped away from me into the water." There he is. "Be quiet and do not cry," answered the frog. "I can give thee good advice. But what wilt thou give me if I fetch the plaything up again?" "What will you have, dear frog?" she said. "My dresses, my pearls and jewels, or the golden crown which I wear?" The frog answered, "Dresses or jewels or golden crowns are not for me, but if thou wilt love me, and let me be thy companion and playfellow, and sit at thy table, and eat from thy little golden plate, and drink from thy cup, and sleep in thy little bed, if thou wilt promise me all these, then will I dive down and fetch up the golden ball." "Oh, I will promise you all," she said, "if only you will get me my ball." But she thought to herself, "What is a silly frog chattering about? Let him remain in the water with his equals. He cannot mix in society." Oh, so she thought that he couldn't mix in society, huh? But the frog, as soon as he had received her promise, drew her hand under the water and dived down. Presently, he swam up again, and with the ball in his mouth, and threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was full of joy when she saw her beautiful plaything. Taking it up, she ran off immediately. "Stop, stop!" cried the frog. "Take me with thee. I can't run as thou canst." But his croaking was useless. Although it was loud enough, the king's daughter did not hear it. Hastening home, she soon forgot the poor frog, who was obliged to leap back into the fountain. The next day, when the king's daughter was sitting at the table with her father and all of her courtiers, and was eating from her own little golden plate, something was heard coming up the marble stairs. Splish, splash, splish, splash, splish, splash. When it arrived at the top, it knocked at the door, and a voice said, "Open the door, thou youngest daughter of the king." She rose and went to see who it was that called her, but when she opened the door and caught sight of the frog, she shut it again. And she sat down at the table, looking very pale. But the king saw that her heart was beating violently, and asked her whether it were a giant who had come to fetch her away, who stood at the door. "Oh, no," she answered, "it is no giant, but an ugly frog." "What does the frog want with you?" said the king. "Oh, dear father, when I was sitting yesterday playing by the fountain, my golden ball fell into the water. This frog fetched it up again because I cried so much. But first I must tell you, he pressed me so much that I promised him he should be my companion. I never thought he could come out of water, but somehow he has jumped out, and now he wants to come in here." At that moment there was another knock, and the voice said, "King's daughter, youngest, open the door. Hast thou forgotten thy promise made at the fountain so clear? Neither the lime tree shade. King's daughter, youngest, open the door." There they are. Then the king said, "What you have promised that you must perform. Go and let him in." So the king's daughter went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in after her, right up to her chair. As soon as she was seated, the frog said, "Take me up." But she hesitated so long that at last the king ordered her to obey. And as soon as the frog sat on the chair, he jumped on to the table and said, "Now push thy plate near me, that we may eat together." And she did so. But as everyone saw, very unwillingly, the frog seemed to relish his dinner much. But every bite the king's daughter ate nearly choked her, till at last the frog said, I have satisfied my hunger, and feel very tired. Wilt thou carry me upstairs now into my chamber, so that we may go to sleep? At this speech the king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog, and dared not touch him, because he actually wanted to sleep on her own beautiful clean bed. But her tears only made the king angry. He said, he helped you in a time of your trouble, and must not now, be despised. So she took the frog up with 2 fingers and put him in the corner of her chamber. But as she lay in her bed, he crept up to it and said, I am so very tired that I shall sleep well. Do take me up, or I will tell thy father. This speech made the king's daughter terribly angry. Catching the frog up, she threw him with all of her strength against the wall, saying, Now will you be quiet, you ugly frog. But as he fell, he was changed from a frog into a handsome prince with beautiful eyes. After a little while, he became, with her father's consent, her dear companion, and Bethered. Then he told her how he had been transformed by an evil witch, and that no one but herself could have the power to take him out of the fountain. And soon they were married and went together into the prince's own kingdom. Yep. So he turned into a handsome prince. Looks can be very deceiving, baby. You gotta take everything into consideration. She made a promise. She decided she didn't want to keep her promise, so she ran away. She ran home. And then her father found out and made her keep the promise. And then her frog turned into a handsome prince. Let's do skip, skip, skip to my loo, skip, skip, skip to my loo, skip, skip, skip to my loo, skip to my loo, my darling. We're going to Texas 2x2. We're going to Texas 2x2. We're going to Texas 2x2. Skip to my loo, my darling. Lost my partner, what will I do? Lost my partner, what will I do? Lost my partner, what will I do? Skip to my loo, my darling. Find another as pretty as you. Find another as pretty as you. Find another as pretty as you. Skip to my loo, my darling. Skip, skip, skip to my loo. Skip, skip, skip to my loo. Skip, skip, skip to my loo. Skip to my loo, my darling. Karina, baby, I love you and I miss you, and I hope that you're having a great day today, and I hope that you're content and that you're happy. I love you so incredibly much. No matter what, you are always loved. I'm there for you. I'm in your heart. I know how much you act like me and how much you're just amazing. I love you and I miss you.